The winds of magic. Aether in Elvish, and also known as elemental winds in Grand Katai, or simply magic. Taxonomically, it comes in many variations, but in the end, it's the same thing. Whatever you choose to call it, it is a name that magic users give the invisible currents of magical energy which flows across the mortal world from the realms of chaos. This ancient force, which comes in many colors, is a form of harnessable, emotionally inflicted energy that can be used by a skilled practitioner, such as a wizard, to manipulate and alter the very fabric of the natural world. Not all the times with good intentions, as we know. The winds of magic affect the mortal world in often bizarre, many times unforeseen, and always random ways. Magic will always change elements of the mortal plane that it comes in contact with, but it is hard to anticipate what form this change will take. Magic bends the physical laws of creation and can remake reality such that things and processes that otherwise could not exist come into being. There are many conflicting theories among the imperial colleges of magic as to why and how the random energies of the Aether, the winds of magic, or the elemental winds, whatever you want to call it, fall into reasonably consistent laws in the mortal world. Most of those who study the phenomenon agree that wherever and whenever the material meets the material, some kind of hybrid between the two is created. When the raw metaphysical chaos energies of the Aether leaks through the chaos gates, it becomes perceptible as 8 separate aspects to those with the appropriate senses. Like demons. These 8 types of magical energy, perceived as different and consistent colors by those with the witch sight, are known to the colleges of magic as the winds of magic. Of course, these energies are not literal winds. Rather, they are made up of the immaterial, chaotic, psychically inflicted energy that is magic, dispersed at different speeds and in different amounts across the Warhammer world. Each aspect of this refracted magic has an associated color and is drawn to different things in different ways. Each different wind is associated with different kinds of spellcrafts that have their own distinct flavors. Although winds is the most widespread term given to these variations of magical energies, that name is not necessarily the most accurate way to describe these energies. The Magister Alchemists of the Golden College often refer to the winds as the etheric humors, while the Hierophants of the College of Light sometimes refer to them as the paradigms of magic, or even the word dreamings, as the shamans of the Amber College prefer to call them. Ultimately, as with the name of Aether and elemental winds, is the same thing. The winds of magic are experienced in many different ways, both among those sanctioned magisters of the Empire and amongst the wild and untrained spellcasters of the world. Those who study and practice magic know the winds variously as concepts, moods, vibrations, fluxes, tides, spirits, forces, and colors. Etherically sensitive people often feel magical energies in slightly different ways depending on the nature of their particular magical awareness. They will often express their descriptions of magic in terms familiar to their personal experiences and cultures. Regardless of the difference in personal experience, it is worth noting that the association of specific colors with the winds of magic is a consistent among all known traditions of arcane spellcraft. Although those sensitive to magic often perceive the winds initially in radical different ways and subjective ways, if they survive long enough to hone these perceptions, they will gradually come to see the different winds of magic as possessing distinct and consistent colors. The Imperial Orders of Magic's system of magic use is powerful, stable, and successful when compared to any other human tradition of arcane spellcraft. Its ideas have influenced even non-sanctioned and downright illegal magic users, such as hedge wizards, witches, black magisters, necromancers, and warlocks over the last few centuries. But how is this different from Katai? Well, the Catanians perceive the 8 winds of magic as what their wizards call elemental winds, corresponding to the terminology used by the wizards of the old world. The 8 elemental winds are water for Lord of Life, fire for Lord of Fire, wood for Lord of Beast, metal for Lord of Metal, stone for Lord of Heavens, light for Lord of Light, spirit for Lord of Death, and darkness for Lord of Shadow. The Catanian dragons, who rule the Celestial Empire, are masters of all the elements at once and practice a form of magic Catanians call Feng Shi. Do not be confused with Feng Shui, which is more an architectural thing. Feng Shi refers effectively to the identical thing that elves have, which is called high magic. The use of magic has a long history among the men of Grand Katai. In Catanian magical traditions, dark magic and high magic, known as yin and yang, respectively, are both held as sacred energies that define the nature of the mortal world. Sometimes Catanians use jet to craft fine pendants, bowls, rings, and other trinkets that serve as protective amulets against all forms of hostile magic, except for yin and yang, and, for some reason, unknown to many in fact, ogre gut magic. But we're not gonna get into that yet. Or ever, at this point. Some Catanian wizards are known as Shugengan, and are said to have Catanian dragon blood in their veins, for which they are known as the Dragon-Blooded. The Shugengan practice the lores of Yin and Yang, which consists of casting spells that contain a certain combination of the different 8 winds, though they do not suffer the corruption or dangers faced by Western practitioners of what would otherwise be considered dark magic in the old world. The Lord of Yin is composed of the Lord of Beasts, wood, metal, death, and shadows, whereas the Lord of Yang is a combination of the lords of fire, life, heavens, and light. The Catanian Dragon Emperor has ultimate mastery of the Lord of Yang, and the Moon Empress is the ultimate practitioner of the Lord of Yin. But now that we got this out of the way, let's look at the 8 winds of magic. Let's look at the winds of magic and the lore associated with them. And we'll start with Akish, the Red Wind, the Lore of Fire. Sometimes also called the 7th lore, is the red wind of magic, and it is the colossans within the aether of the emotional experience and abstract passion of among mortals, in its widest possible sense. It is a projection into the aether of the emotions of brashness, courage, and enthusiasm. It is also an expression of the mortal feelings of warmth and heat that is often felt in a state of high emotion. Akishi blows down from the north as a hot and searing wind of magic, unnoticed by those not sensitive to the etheric current. It is attracted to whether there is passion, argument, or excitement. Actual physical flame also seems to draw the power of Akishi. Human wizards who feel the pull of Akishi, the strongest usually, train as pyromancers of the Bright Order and the Imperial Orders of Magic. Those who do not get proper training often lose control of their powers and destroy themselves, and many times, others. Accidentally, of course. The Magisters of the Bright Order study the lore of fire, also called pyromancy. Spells woven from Akishis are aggressive, destructive, and vigorous. And the Red Magister's spells range from simple but effective fiery blasts and flame balls to the summoning of massive infernos that engulf entire detachments of troops. The lore of fire also includes crude healing spells. A Bright Magister can wield flame as other warriors can wield swords and bows. It is no coincidence that the Magisters of the Bright Order are esteemed above all others in matters of warfare, but are also favored in noble courts as advisors and protectors. In one sense, the Bright Order is the oldest of all the orders of magic, simply because basic fire spells were amongst the very first that Teclis taught to the base magicers and hedge wizards of the Empire during the Great War. Next we move to Azir, the Blue Wind, the Lore of Heavens, also called the Fourth Lore, is the blue wind of magic, and it is said to be a manifestation within the aether of a mortal's capability to be inspired and to seek that which is out of reach. The magic of this wind is based upon knowledge of the unknowable and the manipulation of the skies. This magical lore, also known as astromancy, is practiced by magisters of the celestial order called astromancers to divine the future and pluck the strands of fate. To those with witch sight, the ability to actually see the winds of magic, Azir appears as charged, crackling, cascade like lightning. It has few temporal boundaries and it supposedly reaches into all the possible futures as readily as it floats across the physical distances. After passing into the mortal realm, Azir is said to be drawn into the upper portions of the heavens, becoming a haze of eerie clouds, visible only to those who possess witch sight. This association with the sky gives celestial wizards their power over storm, flight, and mighty hurricanes. As the blue wind blows from the timeless realms of the aether across the distant sky, it supposedly appears as a clouded window through which Azir's magisters can predict certain events. It apparently can be sensed by the manner in which the permanent celestial bodies are distorted by the drifting clouds of Azir's impermanent and temporally distorting the blue light. The magic of Azir leads its practitioners to become dreamy and unearthly, with a calm, contemplative demeanor. These gentle effects may lead some to believe that the blue wind is an easy thing to master. Not so, for one glance into the eyes of a celestial wizard reveals the burning power of Azir and the terrible foresight it brings. It is this foreknowledge that is the true test of astromancy, for if you look into the future, you must live with what you see. The magic of the Celestial College, also known as astromancy and sometimes divination, can be very roughly divided into three areas: prognostication, control over meteorological phenomenon, and the most dangerous, manipulating the future through curses. And we'll go a little through them. Astrological prognostication. This is the arcane art that tries to decipher the most likely future of mortals by examining the interactions of the blue wind of magic, Azir, and the light of various celestial bodies, including moons, stars, comets, and meteorites. It is frequently termed astromancy, divination by the stars. As Azir blows from the timeless realms of the aether across the distant sky, it supposedly appears as a clouded window through which Azir's magistrates can predict certain events, apparently by how the permanent celestial bodies are distorted by the drifting cloud of Azir's impermanent and temporarily distorting the blue light. Yes, I know I've already read that one. I don't know why it's here. I don't know why I copy-pasted it like this. Doesn't matter. Yet even though this is a mystical art, it apparently requires many mathematical processes like geometry and statistical analysis to read the messages hidden in the heavens. It is for that reason, in fact, that the magisters of the Celestial College are exceptionally skilled mathematicians, and in this they share commonalities with the magisters of Kamon. Another lore we'll get soon enough too. Astromancers create instruments for exacting calculations and measurements, such as astrolabes. Yet, it is not just the upper heavens that can be utilized to foresee the future. The astromancers of the Celestial College are also exceedingly adept meteorologists, and through the application of this science, they can forecast weather conditions. And so, they manufacture barometers, heliographs, hygrometers, anemometers, and so on, of incredible accuracy and exquisite artisanship. Astromancers gaze at heavenly bodies through the shimmering haze of Azir's blue light. documenting the various images of movement that can be seen where astrological conjunctions and constellations meet with the Aether's atemporal wind. They must study long and hard to be able to learn how to interpret the formula and hazy images that often glimmers of the future. And they must also master the principles of time and the most infinitely complex nature of cause and effect. In time, they become adept at seeing the parts played by the hands of destiny and chance on the mortal world. Magisters attuned to Azir are also attuned in some way to the future and are fascinated with divination and all the affairs of those things that have not yet come to pass. Azir is the epitome of the pursuit for omens and knowledge of the future, and its magisters are expert at interpreting dreams, the casting of runes, and indeed all manner of prognostication. Celestial wizards are oracles and seers, fortune-tellers and diviners with few equals within or without the Imperium. Yet Azir's magisters are also great theocraticians, dealing more with profound leaps of logic rather than the steady analysis of arduous trial and error that so fascinate the magisters of Kamon. Meteorological magic. Such is their understanding of the processes of the atmosphere that astromancers also have many spells to control the weather, or at least air pressure, movement of air, and even lightning itself, calling it down upon the heads of their enemies. Fate manipulation. Perhaps the most alarming of the astromancer's arcane skills lies in their reputed ability to change the future, in the sense that they can change someone's fate for the worse if they are skilled enough, and if they so choose. How they do this is a secret known only to them, and perhaps the high mages of a distant Sapphire, as it is their power to curse and bring misfortune to their enemies. This is the cause of great alarm among certain elements of Imperial society. Kamon, the Yellow Wind, the Lore of Metal, also called the Second Lore, is the yellow wind of magic and its manifestation within the aether of the abstract and reality of logic, the mortal desire to quantify, the mortal desire and need to learn and instruct, and the wish to implement learning to practical or tangible ends as embodied. The magic of Kamon is called alchemy, the art and science of transmuting, creation, and investigation. Most of its spells have to do with change, rusting new metal to old, turning one metal into another, or enchanting it to become more effective. To those with witch sight, Kamon appears to be a dense and heavy wind. It is supposedly attracted to dense materials, particularly metals. It is said that the heavier and denser the element, the greater Shamon's attraction to it, which may account partially for the reason why gold and lead are so often used in magical experiments, one as a magical conductor and the other as a magical insulator. Kamon is also the wind of logic and experimentation. Thus it also grants spells that protect and encourage such, from aiding the students in their experimentation to drawing insanity from the cluttered mind. A useful benefit, considering one so often leads to the other. The so-called gold wizards who use Kamon are affected by this logical bent, becoming rather dry and scientific in their ways, rigid and yet strong. Dark whisperers indicate that those who weave Kamon can in fact cause their own transmutation from flesh to gold. This thing is also known as alchemy and transmutation. The magic or spellcraft of the Golden Order mostly involves manipulating metals, though they also have many spells to help with their studies and promote rationality. It's generally believed that the Golden Magisters can create gold from nothing. Some claim to have seen them do it, but the Magisters, alchemists of the Golden Order, deny such things. Though complex by any normal measure, it is easier for a Magister to change a man into a pig because both man and pig are living mammals made from similar elements. To do it, Magisters would only have to change the structure, not the material themselves. It is an entirely different matter of change the basic element. To change the basic elements, the very stuff of an object, from one thing to another for longer than a spell's duration. So gold is made of gold, and lead is made of lead. And, short of permanently changing the structure of these two, something beyond the skill and scope of any human magister, any gold transmuted by a spell will eventually revert to its original form. How long this apparent change lasts depends on the skill of the magister and the strength of the spell, meaning that it could last a day or a couple of weeks. It's a good way to embezzle money. This can have some rather severe repercussions. A living creature that is transformed into gold for longer than a few minutes will be dead when it finally reverts to its original shape and substance. Temporary transmutation spells are at the heart of the Golden Order's spellcraft. Their battle magic revolves around causing enemy weapons to rust, turning their steel armor into unyielding lead, or even changing their metal swords and maces into useless objects. Such spells need not be permanent, as long as they serve their purpose on the battlefield. However, temporary they may be. Practicing and refining these spells are the foundation of the Golden Order's magic. Guhur, the Brown Wind, the Lore of Beasts, also called Garrak, Guhurag, Gurman. The Lore of Beasts, and also known as the Eighth Lore, is the brown wind of magic, which is the manifestation within the aether of the wild and bestial spirits of the mortal world and its animal inhabitants. Gahur is used by the feral human wizards of the Amber Order, also known as shamans, to shape spells of beastcraft in communion with the creatures of the wild. In strange shamanistic rites, these magisters can call Gahur into their bodies, allowing it to shape them into wolves and ravens, clawed savages, and gentle horse whisperers. It is known as a savage wind of magic, the antithesis of civilization and domestication, as primal and unreasoning as it is devoid of malice. Gahur is attracted to animals and wild places in equal measures, retreating from the ordered existence of man in his cities. This is reflected in the misanthropic ways of the Amber Wizards, shunning all civilization for the wild mountains and moors where the winds of Gahur blows free. Gahur's magistrates have embraced the savage brown wind of magic, allowing them to have control over all manners of the wild beasts and even communicate with them. Amber magisters can also call upon the attributes of various spirits of the wild and are able to summon the strength of the bear, the swiftness of the hare, and the eyesight of an eagle, and also the heightened sense of smell and hearing of the wolf. Amber wizards are said to be able to shapeshift, traveling on the paws or wings of the wild creatures and birds they transform into if they so desire. Amber wizards are also able to communicate with beasts or even summon them to battle. The Amber Brotherhood uses the brown wind to call upon the power of the wild spirits of nature. Their world vision is an animalistic one, where every living thing, every plant, every animal and insect, and even the soil itself has its own independent living spirit. The world through the eyes of an Amber Magister is a hard one, where the spirits of all living things must compete to live. It is a world of survival only for the fittest, where every creature has its place as predator or prey. Amber Magisters are said to be able to merge their spirits with those of animals and go on vision quests to learn more about themselves, the land, the ways of the spirits, and how they can be pacified or bound to service. Gihran, the Green Wind, the Lore of Life, also called the Third Lore, is a green wind of magic, often described by the Imperial Magisters as the embodiment of the Aether's momentum towards growth and the need to nourish and be nourished. Gihran is the Aether's echo and mirror of fertility and the nurturing aspect of mortal life. This brimming energy has granted the spells powered by Gihran their title as the Lore of Life. Concerned with healing, curatives, and the magic of plants, these powerful spells are yielded by the Jade Wizards with great respect. Known by common folk as druids, these magisters wax and wane with the seasons as they are closely tied to the land and its spirits. Gihran is said to fall upon the mortal world in a manner similar to rainfall upon earth. Those with witch sight claim to be able to see Gihran form into pools and swirling eddies of green-hued magical energy that gradually form into rivers, flowing across the land like water, though unbound by the physical laws. When the winds of magic blow most strong, Gihran flows across the lands like a great tide, sinking into the soil and drawn to the rivers, waterways, lakes, and springs of the mortal world. Its energies is particularly attracted to water and saturates the earth with its life-giving power. It is drawn up through the roots of all plants it comes into contact with, feeding all living things and encouraging their growth. Jade magic, or the spellcraft of the lore of life, also known as druid lore or animism, compromises spells that concern themselves with the change of seasons, agriculture, fertility, growth, soil, earth, and water. These spells are powered by the green wind of magic, Gihran, which has inspired many hedge wizards and petty magickers in the past, including the much fabled elementists of water and earth, and of course druidism. All of these clumsy gropings at Gihran's power can now find themselves perfected and made manifest in the lore of life as taught by the Jade Order. It is said that Gihran's human magisters, or druids as they are sometimes known, are the most sensitive to the nature's life cycles on the countryside, and so spend little time within the confines of the Empire's great cities. Such is their skill with and love for the forces of nature and living things that Gihran's magisters are often called upon to cure crop blights or bring nourishment to barren soil. Druids can make dead earth fertile, cure blights, encourage fertility in humans and beasts, and it is even whispered that they can cause wild and unstoppable growth of creatures and plants if they so wish. Yet, these magisters can also control flows of water and the very earth beneath their feet. In battle, Jade Magisters can call forth steaming geysers in the earth of their enemies and even cause the earth to split under their feet. Hish, the White Wind. The Lore of Light, also called the First Lore, is the white wind of magic, a magical force of illumination and holy radiance. It is the etheric manifestation of light, and the abstract concept light sometimes represents to mortals, like enlightenment and purity. Hish is the light that banishes darkness and keeps terror from your doorsteps. Although diffuse and difficult to manipulate, Hish is a constant and steady luminance that's the complete opposite of chaos's randomness. Hish has potent applications in healing, protection, and the banishment of evil, such as chaos demons. The Magisters of the Light Order, or Hierophants, as they prefer to be known, are among the most disciplined of wizards and the most obstinate foes of chaos. The nature of the Light Order's magic, also known as white wizardry, soul-keeping, and guardian magic, is hard to pin down, as the magic that forms and drives it. The spells of the Light Order tend to fall into three general groups: illumination, protection or healing, and abjuration. Illumination. Spells of illumination fall into two subcategories themselves: those of actual illumination, as in the creation of dazzling lights and so on, and the illumination of the mind, such as the ability to inspire or see through falsehoods. Hierophants are renowned for their mastery of light and brightness, and they are said to be able to bend any kind of luminance to their will in almost any way. Where the pyromancers of the Bright Order create bright, burning fireballs and walls of flame, The Hierophants are able to concentrate light into a tightly focused, destructive force, which, although more limited than the destructive powers of the Pyromancers, is far more controllable and able to be directed because of it. Healing and protection. The Light Order teaches the importance of the sanctity of existence and possesses a great wealth of spells dedicated to healing injuries and protection. This drive to heal and protect is geared more towards the preservation of the spiritual being of intellect and sentient life, rather than a mortal's body, which is more the concern of the Magisters of Gihran. Because of this, Hierophants are generally peaceful and non-violent, but they are not total pacifists like the Sisters of Shalaya. Against the creatures and servants of chaos and dark magic, the Hierophants are utterly ruthless, as devoid of compassion as they are of hate or fury for these creatures. To the Hierophants, the minds and souls of chaos servants are filled with darkness, and the creature's natural luminance has dimmed or has been extinguished altogether. As such, the Hierophants do not view such beings as worthy of the gift of life and consciousness. Abjuration. The abjuration practiced by Hierophants of the White Order isn't about summoning spirits and various etheric beings, but is instead a form of extremely powerful and dependable exorcism, where the exorcism practiced by the priests of Sigmar or more relies on invoking the god in question and the supreme faith of the exorcising priest. The exorcism practiced by the Hierophants relies upon their ability to focus the searing light of Hysh into the possessed person, driving the offending entity into the light of day. However, the magic of Hysh has very limited success exorcising the spirits of dead people, not overtly tainted with dark magic. If Hysh is the light that banishes the darkness, it cannot banish a soul that is already luminescent, just lost. Demons and spirits of the blackest magic, though, like wraiths, are another matter. The great Hierophants of the White Order can drive these creatures back to the darkness of the realm of chaos. Controlling Hysh. Because Hysh is the subtlest of all the winds of magic, it requires a total focus of will and absolute determination of mind to channel and bind it into a spell. Hysh is the most difficult of all the fragmented colors of magic to bend to one's will. For this reason, the spells binding Hysh tend to be very elaborate and ritualistic, meaning that the Lord of Light is the hardest magical lore for a human to master. However, it is accordingly the most stable lore if harnessed correctly. Master Hierophants combine the abilities of their apprentices to draw upon the white wind and focus it into a usable form that can be drawn into the Hierophant and then channeled and sculpted by them into a spell. Many Lord of Light spells are so powerful they would obliterate any individual who tried to use them unaided. However, using the strength of acquired or trained apprentices to control how much magical energy is focused into the Hierophant, and how quickly, Magisters of the Light Order can create enchantments far beyond the powers of other orders of magic. However, not all spells of the Hierophants require the aid of apprentices. Only the most powerful or convoluted requires the assistance of another mage. Shyish, the Purple Wind, also called the Lore of Death, Spirit Lore, and the Sixth Lore, is the purple wind of magic and the embodiment within the aether of mortals' certainty of the passage of time and the inevitability of death for all living things. It is the most mysterious and terrible of all the wholesome forms of magic practiced by men. Shyish is said to be formed within the dimension of the aether by the mortal realization of the transience of life, by the bittersweet emotions produced by the reminiscence of days gone by and friends and relatives no longer living, and also by mortal acceptance of living in the moment, for life is short and can be cut short at any time. It blows from the past and into the future. The purple wind blows most strongly when death must be faced, or endings must inevitably take place. It is therefore drawn to and collects on battlefields, sites of executions, and graveyards. The winds of Sheesh is manipulated by human wizards of the Imperial Amethyst Order, whose adherents are called Amethyst Wizards, or Spiriters, though they prefer to call themselves the Brethren. Sheesh is most often described as a puppet to the passage of time. It blows from the past because the past has ended and is gone, through the present because endings and the expectation of death are an intrinsic part of the living of life, and into the future, for the future leads inevitably towards endings and death. Some have equated Sheesh with destiny, for it does not control what was, is, or shall be, but instead permeates and reflects these things with absolute intimacy. Sheesh blows strongest whenever death must be faced or endings takes place. I've already say this. It is drawn to battlefields where men must embrace or submit to their deaths, and because all soldiers must accept the possibility of their own demise as part of their daily life, Sheesh lingers around the gibbets of execution. And wait, this is another sentence. Sheesh lingers about the gibbets of execution and hangs in the silence of graveyards, where mourners gather in longing and reminiscence. Sheesh is said to be the strongest in times of the most obvious transition, at dawn and dusk, for one is the end of night and the other is the end of day. Many of the Amethyst Order's rituals occur at these times. Sheesh also blows powerfully during spring and autumn, and also the solstices of both summer and winter, for they mark the longest and shortest days of the year, and therefore the beginning of the end for each of the seasons. It is true that the Magisters of the Amethyst Order have power over the dead, and power to cause death. They can steal the soul of their enemy, or suck away their life, leaving naught but a flesh and blood husk. These Magisters are reputed to even be able to see spirits and souls as they travel between this world and the next, and are said to be able to communicate with them after a fashion. The most powerful amongst the Magisters of Sheesh are rumored to be able to contact the spirit world, and whatever remains of the souls of the dead that exists within the Aether. These spirits may sometimes be encouraged to speak through Sheesh's Magisters, for they have a degree of mastery over spirits, both benign and otherwise. Although this ability ends, or so they say, when that soul is embraced or devoured, respectively, by one of the many gods of mankind, or the demons of chaos. Once a man has grown to full maturity, and the point has been crossed whether growing up is replaced with growing old, the Magisters of Sheesh are said to be able to actually see in a noticeable and measurable way his slow demise as death claims him in tiny increments, second by second, hour by hour, and day by day. They see the approaching end of all things that live. There are those who strongly accuse the Amethyst Magisters of dabbling in necromancy, but this is not the case, at least not entirely. Necromancers defy death and despise endings, while the Amethyst Order accept death and embrace endings as a necessary transition and a part of the natural order. Despite this, the Order of Sheesh remains tainted in the eyes of many by their apparent association with the powers of darkness and death. Yet, there are some similarities between the magic of the Amethyst Order, also known as soul-stealing, and the dark arts of necromancy. Only the spiritualism and the spellcraft of the Amethyst College can be practiced without causing the detrimental, physiological, spiritual, and even physical effects of true necromancy. Having said this, Amethyst magic can never reach the levels of raw power achieved by their corrupt and cold-hearted necromancers. Ulgu, the Grey Wind, the Lore of Shadow, also called the Fifth Lore, is the Grey Wind of magic, and, One which is the Aether's embodiment of and reaction to the emotional experience among mortals of being lost or confused. This wind of magic is full of unseen depths, plots, shadows, and illusions. Grey wizards weave Ulgu into elaborate spells that wreath them in its mysterious presence. This lore of shadows contains spells of darkness, invisibility, shadowy death, and panicked bewilderment. Ulgu appear to those with witch sight as thick, impenetrable fog rolling across the earth, invoking a sense of mistrust and confusion in ordinary people who pass through it. Ulgu is drawn to the natural mist and fogs of the mortal world, where it hangs upon the quiet chill of the air, wrapping all in smoking shadow. Ulgu is also drawn to deceptions, mystery, and illusions. Dawn at an ancient stone circle will likely see strands of Ulgu sulking betwixt between the monoliths. Why did he write it like that? Gradually flowing away as the light of day and the time of Heish grips the land. Ulgu works subtle changes upon those who call upon its powers, rendering them as mysterious, puzzling, and fleeting as the spells that they call upon. The Imperial Grey Order of Wizards use this to their own unknowable ends, acting, hopefully, for the greater good beneath the veil of shadows. Ulgu provides. It is hard to remember the face of a Grey Wizard, harder still to track their steps. Those that have tried have returned confused, moonstruck, or occasionally dead. The lore of Shadow, also known as Legerdmain and Phantasmacy, is a magic formed from the drives, purpose, and predisposition of the Grey Wind of Magic. It is the lore of illusion, confusion, and concealment. It is commonly also referred as Shadowmancy. Shadowmancy, then, is the catcall term given to describe the arts of illusionism, which is the branch of magic dealing with deception of the mortal senses. The Grey Order's Shadowmancers seem to bring nightmares alive and the sweetest dreams into reality. They are masters of appearances and sculpting lies. Naturally, Shadowmancy offers great benefits on the battlefield, where the number of friendly troops can be made to appear far fewer, far greater, or far more fearsome. However, the secret role of the Grey Order's Shadowmancers is far more sinister. They are the spy masters of the Empire, unbeknownst to anyone outside their College of Magic. Even the Emperor himself knows only a little more than other Imperial nobles. The Shadowmancers are sworn to oppose chaos and to stay strictly out of Imperial politics, to avoid becoming a tool for inciting instability. The Grey College is the equal of the Light College in its stringent and dedicated commitment to rooting out chaos corruption. However, unaccountable to any outside their ranks, they can fall much more easily. They accordingly have several strictures they impose on themselves, which they enforce stringently and punish harshly, often through execution. And these were the Winds of Magic, some bit of lore about them and everything else.